The mildew smell in the basement had gotten stronger, especially during the rainy season. I propped my last painting against the wall, and a small flake of plaster chipped off the wall where the canvas's edge scraped it. I was 24, a year out of the Los Angeles Art Institute, and I was still living in my parents' basement, or, more accurately, what used to be the storage room. The rent was $800, which came straight out of my $3,200 monthly salary as a curatorial assistant. The rest of the money went to paints, canvases, and the occasional gallery ticket. "Emily, dinner's ready." My mom, Linda, called from the top of the stairs, her voice carrying its usual edge of impatience. I carefully covered my painting with a dust cloth. This tiny 4-square-meter space was my only sanctuary. The walls were covered in posters of Van Gogh and Frida Kahlo, and a photo of me from 3 years ago when I won a scholarship. Back then, I still smiled, showing my 2 small fangs. Climbing the stairs, the light from the dining room's crystal chandelier was so bright it made my eyes hurt. My dad, Robert, was already sitting at the head of the table, his fingers scrolling through architectural blueprints on his phone, his brows furrowed. My younger brother, Tyler, was slumped in the chair next to him, his AirPods blaring rap music. His feet were propped on the table, and the soles of his limited edition sneakers gleamed under the light. "Get your feet off the table, Tyler," I said as I pulled out my chair. The red wine stain on the tablecloth was from Thanksgiving last year. My mom had said, "We're going to replace it anyway," but it was still here. Tyler snorted, pulling his feet back, but not before deliberately grinding his heel on my new art book. "Well, look who's back. The great artist. How many frames did you wipe down at the gallery today?" "Tyler!" My mom came over with the roasted chicken, flour dusting her apron. "Be nice to your sister." But her eyes were fixed on Tyler's sneakers. "Those are so nice. I'll send you some money tomorrow. I heard that new blue pair is great, too." Tyler's face lit up. "You're the best, Mom. You always get it." My dad put his phone down and carved a big piece of chicken breast, the grease dripping onto the plate. "Emily, any big projects at the gallery today? Who did you get coffee for?" He put extra emphasis on big projects, a smirk on his face as if he just told a joke. I tightened my grip on my knife and fork. "We were setting up today. There's a joint exhibition with some emerging artists next Thursday." "Emerging? The ones who can't even get their perspective right?" My dad scoffed. "I've told you 100 times, art doesn't pay the bills. The bricklayers at my company make more than you do." "Dad, laying bricks and curating are 2 different things." "What's the difference?" my mom interjected, piling mashed potatoes on Tyler's plate. "It's all service work, isn't it? Emily, Amy from next door just got engaged last week. Her fiancé's a lawyer with an apartment in Beverly Hills. What about you? You're 24, and you don't even have a decent boyfriend. You just hang around with all those broke artists." "Mom, I have a career." "A career?" Tyler let out an exaggerated laugh. "You call that a career, sis? You make just enough to cover rent, and you have to think twice before buying a tube of paint. I saw you buying expired milk at the supermarket last time. Seriously, why don't I talk to my professor and see if I can get you a photocopying job on Wall Street?" I looked down at the chicken on my plate. It was cold, just like my mood. This scene played out every Sunday at dinner, like a scripted play. My dad's art is useless monologue, my mom's marriage is everything speech, and Tyler's money is all that matters act. And I was always the negative example. "By the way, it's my birthday next Thursday," I said, my voice softer than I'd intended. "The gallery's hosting my first curatorial project. It starts at 7 p.m. If you're free." "We're not." My dad cut me off, short and sharp. "I have to go to San Diego to check on a construction site that day. I'm going shopping with friends," my mom added, refilling Tyler's glass with soda. Tyler shrugged. "I have finance class on Thursday. The professor said he's taking attendance." The sound of my knife and fork hitting the plate suddenly became deafening. I looked at them. None of the 3 showed the slightest bit of guilt, as if refusing to attend their daughter's first professional milestone was as normal as deleting spam email. "Fine," I said, putting down my cutlery. My stomach felt queasy. "I'm full." You barely ate anything, my mom frowned. Are you on a diet? I've told you so many times, being too thin makes it hard to get married. I'm going back to the basement. I stood up. I heard Tyler's chuckle from behind me. She's probably going to paint those weird squiggles no one understands. The moment I closed the door, I leaned against the cold wall and heard my own heartbeat echoing in the silent basement. My phone screen lit up with a message from the gallery owner. Emily, the opening reception on Thursday is important. Invite as many people as you can. I opened my contacts, scrolling past Dad, Mom, and Tyler, but ultimately closed the app. In the darkness, Van Gogh's eyes on the poster watched me with eternal compassion. Thursday arrived quickly. 3 hours before the opening, I was a spinning top, confirming painting placements, checking lighting angles, and preparing press kits for journalists. The gallery owner patted my shoulder. Relax, you're doing great. But I could feel my shirt sticking to my back with sweat. The gallery started to get lively around 6:30 p.m. The art critic Martha arrived in her signature red suit. A few collectors were chatting in hushed tones. Even the competitor from the gallery next door came to offer his fake support. I moved through the crowd with a glass of champagne, my smile as stiff as a mask. Emily, my assistant, Mia, ran over with her phone. A man dropped this off. He said it was specifically for you. It was an elegant white envelope with no name on it. I opened it and found a card with congratulations on your first exhibition. So proud of you. M written in pen. My heart skipped a beat. M? Could it be Mark? My college sweetheart, the sculpture student who said he'd wait for me to have my own solo show. We broke up because he went to New York for graduate school, and I chose to stay in Los Angeles to take care of my sick mom, only to find out later that she just didn't want me to leave. Where is he? I grabbed Mia's arm. He's already gone. Said he had to go somewhere else, Mia said, pointing toward the door. He was driving a black Porsche. Was Mark that successful now? I looked out the window at the stream of cars, but I couldn't find the black Porsche. Maybe it was just someone with the same initial? I carefully put the card in my wallet, my fingertips trembling slightly. Halfway through the reception, I was catching my breath in a corner. On the wall was my favorite painting, Broken Mirror, by a 22-year-old artist. Different faces were reflected in the shattered pieces of glass. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. It was my mom. Emily, your brother's computer is broken. Come back and fix it. My mom's voice was sharp, like nails on a chalkboard. Mom, I'm at the opening reception. What kind of reception is more important than your brother's homework? He has to turn in a paper tomorrow. Get home now. The phone was slammed down. I stared at the black screen, and the laughter and clinking glasses around me seemed to slow down. Taking a deep breath, I apologized to the owner, grabbed my bag, and rushed out of the gallery. The evening breeze carried the humidity of the Pacific, and it felt cold on my face. When I got home, the living room was brightly lit. Tyler was having a tantrum over his laptop's black screen, the keyboard on the floor. My mom was pacing back and forth. My dad sat on the couch watching TV, as if none of this had anything to do with him. You're finally back, my mom grabbed me. Go see what's wrong. Tyler said he has to turn in his paper tomorrow. I crouched down to check the computer. The keyboard still had chip grease on it. Looks like the system crashed. It needs to be reinstalled. Then do it now. Tyler kicked my chair impatiently. You're so slow and useless. Tyler! I stood up abruptly, my voice trembling with anger. This is the third time you've broken your computer. Can you be more careful with your things? It's my computer. It's none of your business if I break it. Tyler glared at me. Besides, this old thing needs to be replaced anyway. Mom, I want the new MacBook Pro. My mom immediately nodded. Okay. I'll buy it for you tomorrow. Emily, hurry up and fix this. I'm going to go heat up some milk for your dad. I looked at the empty doorway as my mom's back disappeared into the kitchen. My dad changed the channel, and the cheers from the sports game came from the TV. In that moment, something that had been holding me together for so long suddenly shattered. At 2 a.m., I finally finished backing up Tyler's paper and reinstalling the system. He had already gone to bed, snoring loudly. I dragged my exhausted body back to the basement, but I couldn't sleep. I opened my phone's photo album and found a picture from 3 years ago, my dad's office at his company. He was swinging me around, laughing like a child. "You're my good luck charm, honey. This money came just in time. When the company gets back on its feet, I'll pay you back double and invest in your own gallery." The light from the phone screen shone on my face, and a cold, salty liquid ran down my cheeks. I opened my voice recorder and saw the audio file labeled Dad. It was 2 minutes and 37 seconds long. Sunday dinner came around again. This time, the topic was Amy's 28-year-old lawyer fiancé. My mom chattered on and on about wedding details, as if she'd already received an invitation. I heard they're getting married at a vineyard in Napa Valley, and Amy's wedding dress is Vera Wang. It takes 3 months just for a custom order. "Mom, can you please stop talking about Amy?" I interrupted. The steak on my plate was completely cold. My dad put down his wine glass, his eyes sharp as a knife. "What? Can't we talk about her? Emily, let me tell you, if you were half as sensible as Amy." "Sensible like giving up your dreams to marry a lawyer?" I sneered. "Or like Tyler, who buys sneakers with his parents' money all day." "Emily!" My dad slammed his hand on the table. The wine glass wobbled, and wine spilled onto the tablecloth. "How can you talk to your elders like that? Think you're a grown-up, do you? Don't forget you're living in my house and eating my food." Tyler fanned the flames from the side. "Dad, don't even bother with her. She's just jealous. Jealous that I have nice shoes and that Amy's marrying into money." My mom clutched her chest, a pained look on her face. "We're doing this for your own good. Why can't you understand? Can art pay the bills? Who's going to take care of you when we're old?" "Take care of me?" I laughed, and tears suddenly welled up. "Do you remember 3 years ago, when Dad's company almost went bankrupt?" The air in the dining room froze. My dad's face changed. My mom's hand was suspended in midair. The smile on Tyler's face disappeared. I slowly put down my knife and fork, my voice unnervingly calm, as if I were telling someone else's story. Back then, suppliers were demanding payment, and the bank was threatening to seize the building. Dad was smoking in his study every night, and Mom, you secretly pawned all your jewelry, didn't you? My mom's lips trembled. How did you know?" "Because that night, I overheard you two fighting in the living room." I took out my phone, opened the long-forgotten audio file, and pressed play. The next day, I transferred my art scholarship of $15,000, which I had just received, to Dad's company account. My dad suddenly stood up, his chair scraping the floor. "What are you talking about? When did I?" "Oh, really?" I pressed play. My dad's choked-up voice came from the phone, echoing clearly in the dining room. "Don't worry, honey. This money is a loan. When the company gets back on its feet, I'll pay you back double. And I'll invest in your own gallery and make you a boss." The recording continued, my dad sobbing and thanking me, saying I was his pride and joy. The dining room was so quiet you could hear everyone's breathing. My dad's face went from red to purple, and then to a dead gray. My mom's face was pale, her lips moving but unable to form a word. Tyler looked at us, bewildered. The chicken drumstick in his hand dropped onto his plate. I put my phone away, stood up, and gently pushed my chair back into place. That $15,000, plus 6% interest for 3 years, comes out to $18,420. "And Tyler," I turned to my dumbfounded brother, "you sold my design sketches to a clothing brand last year and made $8,000. I think we need to settle that account, too." Tyler's face instantly went white. You're lying. I designed that myself." "Did you?" I opened my photo album and showed 2 pictures. One was a photo of my design sketch, dated March 15, 2023. The other was a screenshot from Tyler's social media, where he was proudly showing off the t-shirt he designed, dated June 28, 2023. "Should I send these to your school's honor committee? I remember Boston University is pretty strict about academic dishonesty." Tyler's lips trembled, and tears were about to fall. Mom! Look at her! She's bullying me! My mom ignored him and instead lunged for my phone. Emily! What are you doing? We're family! I sidestepped her, and she stumbled. Family? I sneered. When you charged me rent, when you mocked my dreams, and when you treated me like a free babysitter, why didn't you remember we were family? My dad suddenly rushed at me, his hand raised as if to strike. I didn't flinch. I just looked at him coldly. His hands stopped in midair, his knuckles white from clenching. Finally, he let it fall limply to his side. I'm moving out tonight. I turned and walked toward the basement. Each step felt like I was walking on cotton, yet it was firm and resolute. I heard my mom's sobs and my dad's roars behind me, but I didn't look back. Packing my bags was surprisingly quick. The art books and posters I once treasured now felt like a burden. I only took my most important art supplies, my scholarship certificate, and the card from Mark. Before locking the door, I took one last look at the basement that had imprisoned me for 3 years. Van Gogh on the wall was still smiling, as if to say, "Are you finally leaving?" When I walked out the door, the sky was already growing light. The eastern horizon was a pale gray. The Pacific sea breeze carried a salty, damp scent. I stood on the side of the road waiting for an Uber. My phone vibrated with a message from the gallery owner. The opening last night was a success. A collector is very interested in the works you curated and wants to meet with you. In the distance, I could hear the sound of waves crashing against the rocks and seagulls circling in the sky. I took a deep breath. The air didn't smell like the basement's mildew, it smelled of freedom. On my phone's map, a red pin was blinking, my new apartment in the arts district. It was small, but it had a south-facing window, and the sunlight could fill the entire room. The Uber slowly pulled up. I opened the car door and looked back at the familiar house. The curtains were drawn, as if nothing had happened. But I knew that some things had changed forever. As the car got onto the highway, the sun rose over the ocean, and golden light streamed in through the car window. I turned on the music, and Taylor Swift's Shake It Off started playing. I slid my finger across the phone screen, found my mom's number, and blocked it. Then my dad's. Then Tyler's. My phone was quiet. I looked out the window at the palm trees rushing past. A long-lost smile finally appeared on my face, just like in that photo from 3 years ago, revealing my 2 small fangs. The sun was shining, and the road ahead was long, but I knew that this time, I was going to live for myself. My new apartment was on 7th Street, only 3 blocks from the gallery. The moment I opened the door, sunlight poured in, casting diamond-shaped patterns on the floor. The landlady was right, the south-facing window was the studio's biggest selling point. I set up my easel by the window. The canvas was still blank, but I could already imagine what it would look like, a blue background, golden sunflowers, and a smiling girl. The first week after moving was a whirlwind. The gallery's joint exhibition was a bigger success than I expected. The interested collector signed a contract, not only buying 3 paintings but also promising to fund my next curatorial project. The owner patted my shoulder and said, "Emily, I knew I was right about you." My colleagues started calling me Curator Emily, and while it was a bit unusual, it sounded nice. The day before my birthday, I bought a new dress. It was off-white with a pleated skirt, like a cloud. I twirled in front of the mirror. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like a 24-year-old girl, not a resentful woman trapped in a basement. My phone rang with an unknown number. I hesitated but answered anyway. "Hello? Is this Emily?" The voice on the other end was familiar and a little tentative. I frowned. "Who is this?" "It's Mark. Mark Anderson." My heart skipped a beat, and my hand holding the phone trembled slightly. "Mark? How did you?" "I got your number from the gallery owner," he said with a soft laugh. "I heard your exhibition was a success. Congratulations." "Thank you." I didn't know what to say. My college memories rushed back like a tidal wave, staying up all night in the studio, him sharpening my pencils, me posing for his sculptures. The day we graduated, he hugged me at the airport and said, "I'll be back for you." I'm in Los Angeles now. Mark's voice sounded a little nervous. I'm a researcher at the Getty Center. I went to the opening that day, but you looked so busy I didn't want to bother you. So it really was him who sent the card. I walked to the window, looking down at the arts district. The gallery signs shimmered in the sunlight. Are you doing well? I'm doing great. He paused. It's your birthday tomorrow, right? I saw it on the gallery's profile. I was wondering, could I take you out to dinner? After I hung up, I stood by the window for a long time. The wind rustled the curtains, carrying the late summer heat. The date on my phone calendar was circled for tomorrow, with a note next to it, birthday, first day of the exhibition. It had been 3 years. This was the first time anyone had remembered my birthday. On the day the exhibition opened, the gallery was decorated with flowers and balloons like a party. The owner had hired a band, and jazz music filled the space. I wore my new dress and high heels, moving among the guests and introducing the artist's work. The critic Martha came over and handed me a glass of champagne. Emily, you're so talented. The way you've arranged these works tells a complete story. Thank you. I took a sip of champagne, the bubbles bursting on my tongue. Who's that man in the gray suit? Martha nodded toward the door. He hasn't taken his eyes off you since the opening. I turned, and my heart raced. Mark was standing by the door, wearing a well-fitted gray suit. His hair was neatly combed. He looked much more mature than 3 years ago, but the lines around his eyes when he smiled were so familiar. He was holding a small gift box, standing there a little awkwardly, like a teenager on his first date. I should go say hi. I smiled at Martha, lifted my skirt, and walked toward him. My heels clicked on the wooden floor. You came. I stood in front of him, feeling my cheeks flush. Mark handed me the gift box, his ears a little red. Happy birthday. I didn't know what you'd like, but I passed by a gallery and saw the small painting. I thought it suited you. Inside the box was a miniature print of Van Gogh's Starry Night, but the stars had been replaced with the Los Angeles skyline. I looked up at him. He was nervously watching my reaction, like a student waiting for a grade from a teacher. I love it. Thank you. I carefully held the painting. How did you know I liked Van Gogh? Your dorm room walls in college were covered with his posters, he said with a smile. You once said you wished you could live in a room with a starry sky. In that moment, my eyes welled up. It turned out someone really did remember every word I'd said, even after 3 years. The band suddenly started playing Happy Birthday, and my colleagues walked over with a small cake topped with 24 candles. In the flickering candlelight, I closed my eyes and made a wish. I hoped I'd never have to go back to that basement. I hoped I could always do what I loved. And I hoped the person next to me would stay a little longer. After I blew out the candles, the crowd erupted in applause. Mark stood on the edge of the crowd, smiling at me, his eyes as gentle as the California sunshine. At 7 p.m., after the last guest had left, I was exhausted and slumped in a chair. Mark came over and handed me a cup of hot cocoa. To celebrate your first successful exhibition. Thank you. I took the cup, and the warmth spread from my hands to my heart. If it weren't for you, I might still be trapped in that basement. Mark sat next to me, his shoulder gently touching mine. You never belonged there. He looked into my eyes. I always knew you belonged in a gallery, in the sunlight. My phone rang at an inconvenient moment. Mom flashed on the screen. I frowned, hung up, and blocked the number. But it rang again. This time it was Dad. I just turned off my phone, and the world finally fell silent. Family? Mark asked softly. I nodded and told him about lending my dad the money 3 years ago. He listened quietly without interrupting, just holding my hand. His palm was warm, with the calluses a sculptor would have. You're very brave, he said. Not everyone has the courage to break free. I used to think it was about being a good daughter, but now I know it was cowardice, I said, looking at the night sky outside the window. There were very few stars, overshadowed by the city lights. But I understand now. True loyalty isn't about sacrificing yourself, it's about living the life you want. Mark wrapped his arms around me. I rested my head on his shoulder, listening to his steady heartbeat. The jazz music played softly. The gallery lights cast a gentle glow on us. This scene was so much like a painting I once made, Gallery at Night, but in that painting, the girl was alone. Are you free tomorrow? Mark's chin rested on the top of my head. I want to take you somewhere. The next morning, Mark picked me up in his car. It was an old Volvo, its trunk filled with art supplies and sculpting tools. This was my grandpa's car, he said with a bashful smile. I drove it all the way from Boston, and it gave me a lot of trouble. We drove out of the city, heading north along the Pacific Coast Highway. The sun shone on the water, sparkling like scattered diamonds. We rolled down the windows, and the salty sea breeze filled the car. Mark played some of our favorite college songs. Ed Sheeran's photograph drifted through the car. Where are we going? I asked, looking at the road signs. We were almost in Malibu. You'll see when we get there, he said with a mysterious smile, turning the wheel and taking a small road. The car stopped in front of a small white house. The yard was full of sunflowers, like a golden ocean. Mark took my hand and led me inside. A gray-haired old woman sat on the porch, sketching. Grandma, this is Emily, Mark introduced me. Emily, this is my grandma, Evelyn. She used to be an illustrator. Evelyn put down her pencil, her eyes sparkling. I know you. Mark talks about you all the time. Says you're a talented painter. My face turned red instantly. Mark scratched his head. Grandma. Evelyn laughed and stood up, pulling me into her studio. The walls were covered with illustrations for children's stories, sci-fi novels, and landscapes. The brush strokes were warm, and the colors were bright. This is an illustration I did for Charlotte's web, she said, pointing to a drawing of Charlotte the spider weaving her web. Mark was just a little boy back then. He was always messing around in my studio. Standing by the studio window, I could see the Pacific Ocean in the distance, waves crashing against the rocks, and seagulls circling in the sky. Mark said you want to open your own gallery? Evelyn handed me a glass of lemonade. I nodded. Yeah, I want to give a platform to emerging artists like me. I support you, Evelyn said, patting my hand. Art needs new blood, young people with courage like you. She paused. I faced a lot of difficulties when I was young. It was hard for female artists to get recognition. But I stuck with it because I knew my paintbrush was my weapon. That afternoon, we ate sandwiches Evelyn made in the yard and talked a lot. Mark showed me pictures of him as a child, wearing dinosaur pajamas and holding a paintbrush, his face covered in paint. Evelyn told me stories about her and her husband. They met in Montmartre in Paris. He was a sculptor, and she was an illustrator. They were poor but as happy as a king and queen. As the sun set, we said our goodbyes reluctantly. Evelyn gave me a copy of one of her illustrated books. On the first page, she had written, "To Emily, never stop painting. The world needs your colors." On the drive back to the city, Mark held my hand in his lap. My grandma really likes you. I like her a lot, too, I said, turning to look at him. The sunset glow on the side of his face softened his features. Thank you for taking me here. I want you to know, Mark said, looking at me intently, you're not alone. You have talent, you have dreams, and you have me. If you'll have me. The car stopped in front of my apartment building. The neon lights of the arts district were already on. Mark leaned over and kissed me gently on the forehead. Happy birthday, Emily. I walked up the stairs. When I looked back, he was still standing by the car, waving at me. Inside my apartment, Evelyn's illustrated book was on the easel. The words on the first page sparkled in the lamplight. I turned on my phone, and a flood of missed calls and messages came in from my mom and Tyler. I deleted them and then put my phone on silent. The next day at work, the owner called me into his office. Emily, I have good news. He handed me a contract. That collector wants to fund your gallery project, and he's also willing to provide the space, that old historic building in the arts district. What do you think? I looked at the terms of the contract, my fingers trembling slightly. I could name the gallery myself, choose the artists myself, and the budget. The budget was enough to hire 2 assistants. The dream I had 3 years ago in the basement was suddenly within reach. I need to think about it, I said, trying to calm my excitement. Of course, the owner said with a smile. But I think you already know the answer. As I walked out of the office, the sunlight streamed through the gallery's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long beams of light on the floor. I took out my phone, found Mark's number, and, after a moment's hesitation, sent him a message. What do you say? If I open my own gallery, would you help me? Almost instantly, he replied, I'm on standby, my boss. Followed by a winky face emoji. I leaned against the wall, looking out at the arts district. The gallery's signs sparkled in the sun. In the distance, the outline of the Pacific Ocean was faintly visible. The sea breeze blew in, carrying the scent of freedom. The photo from 3 years ago in the basement was still in my phone's album, but now, the girl's smile no longer looked bitter, it was full of hope. Maybe that's just how life is. Just when you think you're forever trapped in a basement, a window suddenly opens. The sun shines in, chasing away all the mildew and darkness. And all you have to do is be brave enough to walk out and embrace the starry sky that belongs to you. My new apartment's desk was covered in documents. I arranged the bank statements from 3 years ago by date and circled the $15,000 transfer with a blue pen. Mark walked in with 2 cups of hot cocoa. Steam condensed into droplets on the window. Winter in the arts district had arrived unexpectedly. It had rained a little last night, and the puddles on the street reflected the gallery's neon signs. Did the lawyer say this is enough? He placed the cups on the corner of the desk, his eyes scanning the scattered evidence, bank statements, screenshots of my dad's text messages. You saved my life, honey. This is a loan, and the audio file labeled November 7th, 2022. I took a sip of cocoa, the marshmallow melting on my tongue. My lawyer, Chin, said it's best to have a written acknowledgement of the debt from my dad, but this should be enough. California allows for verbal contracts, especially with transfer records and a recording. My fingers slid across the phone screen. My mom had sent over 20 text messages last night. The latest one read, "Are you trying to kill us?" Mark gently wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on the top of my head. If you're tired, take a break. Don't push yourself too hard. His wool sweater smelled like lavender from the dry cleaner, completely different from the perpetual mildew smell of the basement. I shook my head and played the audio file. My dad's slightly slurred voice came from the speaker. When the company gets back on its feet, I'll pay you back double. I'll invest in your gallery and make you a boss. The timestamp showed 2:37 a.m. That day, he had just received the transfer, and the company's creditors were scheduled to show up the next day. I should have done this a long time ago. I turned off the recording and looked out the window. It had started raining again, hitting the glass of the historic building that would one day be the Starry Night Gallery. Mark and I had already started painting the walls. He handled the woodwork, and I painted the murals. On weekends, artist friends would come to help. Pizza boxes were stacked in a corner, and laughter could be heard across the street. My phone suddenly vibrated with an unknown number. I answered, and my dad's enraged voice almost blew out my eardrum. "Emily, you ungrateful wretch. I raised you for 24 years, and this is how you repay me?" Mark grabbed the phone and put it on speaker. Lawyer Chen's voice came through. "Mr. Robert, I'm Emily's attorney, Chen Jing. Regarding the $15,000 loan from November 7th, 2022, we have sent a demand letter to your company's address. If we don't receive a written repayment commitment within 3 days, we will proceed with a lawsuit." The other end of the line went silent. Then there was the sound of something breaking, and the call ended. Mark looked at me, his eyes full of concern. "Are you okay?" I took a deep breath, picked up a pen, and circled the date 3 days from now on my calendar. I'm more calm than I thought I'd be. My palms were actually sweating, but when my dad's rage turned to fear, something that had been building up for years finally began to loosen, not forgiveness, but a sense of release. The next day, at the law firm, Attorney Chen's office was in a downtown high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking City Hall. She pushed a stack of files toward me, her nails painted a bright red. Their lawyer contacted me. They want to mediate. Mediate? I looked through the files. My dad's lawyer proposed a 5-year repayment plan with 0.5% interest and asked me to sign a non-disclosure agreement. They're scared. Attorney Chen leaned back in her chair. Robert's company is in trouble again. The City Hall project was found to have used substandard materials, and they're under investigation. If they get sued right now, the bank will immediately withdraw their loan. She looked at me. What do you want? Just the money? I thought of the dust cloth in the basement, the design sketches Tyler stole, and the useless accusations that had pricked my heart like needles all those years. I want a public apology. Attorney Chen raised an eyebrow. That's harder than getting the money. In mediation, an apology is an admission of guilt, which would be very bad for them. Then we'll go to court. I closed the files. The rain outside had stopped, and the sun was shining on City Hall's dome. The money has to be paid, and the apology has to be made. When I left the law firm, Mark was waiting for me downstairs with 2 hot coffees. He saw the look on my face and understood. Want to get something to eat? He gestured to the taco shop on the corner, where we had our first date. As soon as we sat down, my mom called again. This time I answered. Emily, I'm begging you. Her voice was tearful. Your dad hasn't been able to sleep for days. If the company goes under, we'll all be on the streets. Your brother is still in school. He can't lose his future. Mom, I said, stirring the lemon slice in my cup. You were there 3 years ago when I transferred the scholarship to Dad. You said, Emily's such a good daughter, she knows how to help the family. Why is it suddenly my fault? We had no choice back then. My mom's tone suddenly changed. What does a girl like you need so much money for? You're doing fine now, aren't you? Tyler's a boy. He needs to get married and buy a house someday. Mark took my hand. I spoke softly into the phone. The mediation is next Wednesday, in room 302 at the courthouse. If you want to talk, come with sincerity. Then I hung up and blocked the number. On the day of the mediation, I arrived at the courthouse half an hour early. Mark sat with me on a bench, holding the lucky charm Evelyn had drawn for me, a robin on a sunflower. Nervous? He asked softly. A little. I looked at my reflection in the glass door. I was wearing a beige pantsuit with my hair in a ponytail, looking, as Attorney Chen had said, professional but approachable. The elevator doors opened, and my parents and Tyler walked out. My dad had lost a lot of weight. His suit hung loosely on him, and his tie was crooked. My mom was wearing a black coat, with heavy makeup that couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. Tyler followed behind, looking down. His limited edition sneakers had been replaced with ordinary Nikes, and the heel was scuffed. He had the hood of his hoodie pulled low. In the mediation room, my dad's lawyer kept emphasizing family harmony. My mom dabbed at her tears, and Tyler stared at his shoes. It wasn't until Attorney Chen played the recording that my dad's face turned purple. He slammed his hand on the table and yelled, "This is blackmail. I'll sue you for illegal recording." California is a one-party consent state, Mr. Robert, Attorney Chen said calmly, opening the law book. Civil Code Section 632 allows recording as long as one party consents. Furthermore, this recording was made in your home, which is a legal recording in a private space. The mediation reached a standstill. Their lawyer offered to increase the interest to 3% but refused to apologize. My mom suddenly rushed over and grabbed my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. "Emily, just forgive your dad. I'm begging you." I pulled my hand away with force, leaving 4 red marks on my wrist. "Mom, you were never proud of me, were you?" I looked into her eyes. "When Tyler got a C, you said, at least he tried. When I won a scholarship, you said, don't get too full of yourself. When Tyler stole my design sketches, you said, boys will be boys. And when I complained, you said, you're the older sister, you have to let him have his way." Tears finally fell, smudging a small patch of ink on the documents. "I don't want your money, and I don't want your apology anymore. I'll see you in court." When I walked out of the mediation room, Mark hugged me tightly. The courthouse lobby was bustling with people. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the floor. "You did the right thing," His voice was muffled. "I think I was more nervous than you." A week later, I received a court summons. The trial date was set for a month from now. That night, I was painting a mural at the gallery when Tyler suddenly burst in, smelling of alcohol. "Delete the recording." His eyes were red, and he was waving a box cutter. "Otherwise, I'll ruin your stupid gallery." Mark rushed to stand in front of me. Tyler's knife cut his arm, and blood immediately seeped out. "Haven't you had enough?" Mark's voice was low and angry. "You stole Emily's design sketches and sold them to a clothing brand for $8,000. We have the messages and the transfer records. Should I send them to your school now?" The knife clattered to the floor. Tyler looked at Mark's bleeding arm and suddenly covered his face and started crying. "You're all making me do this. Mom and Dad fight all the time, saying it's my fault that my sister is suing them." I took out my phone and called the police, then an ambulance. When the police arrived, Tyler was still crying on the floor like a child. My mom came to the hospital and yelled and hit me until the nurse called security. On the day of the trial, news of my dad's company filing for bankruptcy was in the papers. We ran into him outside the courthouse. He was wearing a wrinkled jacket, and his hair had turned mostly gray. He looked at me, his lips moving, but he finally just turned and walked away. Attorney Chen said the other party had given up and agreed to pay back the $18,420, including interest, and publish a public apology in a local newspaper. The day I got the verdict, Mark and I sat on the gallery floor all night. The stars outside the window were exceptionally bright, spinning like in a Van Gogh painting. Mark's arm was bandaged, and he was watering the sunflowers. We had planted a row of them at the gallery entrance. Evelyn said sunflowers always face the sun. "You know," I said, leaning my head on his shoulder, "I didn't actually want that apology." "I know," he said, holding my hand. "But you deserve to be seen." My phone received a text from the bank. $18,420 had been deposited. I immediately transferred it to Attorney Chen to pay her legal fees and donated the rest to the Youth Arts Foundation. As for the apology, I had the lawyer send it to the newspaper but didn't pay any more attention to it. What was important wasn't what they said, but that I finally didn't have to listen anymore. 3 months later, the Starry Night Gallery officially opened. Evelyn cut the ribbon. Mark's sculpture was in the atrium, and my college paintings were in the second-floor exhibition hall. At the opening reception, critic Martha held my hand and said, "This is what art should be, full of soul and warmth." Tyler later transferred to a community college, and I heard he was working at a restaurant to pay off his debt. My mom occasionally lingered outside the gallery but never came in. Once, I saw her standing in front of the sunflowers, holding a painting I had made in high school, a birthday gift for her, of our whole family on the beach, everyone smiling. Mark came up behind me and hugged me, his chin resting on the top of my head. "What are you thinking about?" I looked at our 2 reflections in the glass door, our hands clasped together, and on our ring fingers were the rings he had made from leftover sculpting materials. "I was thinking," I said with a smile, turning to kiss him, "I'm so glad I asked you that question that day." Ed Sheeran's Perfect played softly on the gallery's speakers. Sunlight streamed through the historic building's glass windows, falling on every painting and on us. I finally understood that some chains aren't put on by others, you put them on yourself. And when you're finally brave enough to take them off, the whole world will make way for you. Invitation cards for the Starry Night Gallery's anniversary party were piled on the front desk. The off-white envelopes were stamped with a golden sunflower. I used a box cutter to open the last stack of envelopes, my fingertips dusted with gold glitter. It was Lily's idea, my intern. "It's gotta sparkle like a star." She had just graduated from an arts high school, her eyes bright enough to hold the whole galaxy. She reminded me of myself 3 years ago. "Emily, the reporter from the LA Times is here." Lily popped her head in, a sunflower hairpin clipped to her ponytail. "She said she wants to take a picture of you painting the mural." I put down the box cutter, my apron splattered with acrylic paint. We were working on a new mural in the center of the gallery. The theme was rebirth. The canvas hung from the dome to the floor, and we had been painting it for 3 weeks. Mark had built the scaffolding for me. Every night, we went home covered in paint, our knuckles shiny from holding paintbrushes. The reporter was a young woman with glasses, her notebook covered in clippings about the gallery. I heard you broke even in your first year, she said, holding up her voice recorder. That's a miracle in the arts district. I stood on the scaffolding, holding my paintbrush. Blue paint spread across the canvas like waves in the Pacific. It's a team effort. I was laughing inside when the accountant sent us the report last week. Mark and I jumped for joy in the office for a full 10 minutes, nearly knocking over the antique vase Evelyn had given us. Can you tell me about this mural? The reporter looked up at me. The girl breaking free from chains in the middle. That's me, I said, dipping my paintbrush in gold paint and adding a star to the girl's hair. I used to feel trapped, but then I realized I was the one who put on the chains. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a bank notification. Your transfer to the Youth Arts Foundation has been deposited. This was the third grant. It was enough to buy art supplies for 5 low-income students for a year. After the reporter left, Lily came in with a stack of magazines. Emily, we're in Art Forum. The critics said you're redefining the Los Angeles art scene. The magazine cover showed the dome of the Starry Night Gallery, with sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows, casting a rainbow on the floor. I flipped to the inner pages. In one photo, Mark was installing a sculpture, and I was handing him tools. In the background, artists were chatting, coffee cups were piled in a corner. This was the gallery I wanted, not a cold white box, but a space that breathed. Emily, a man says he wants to see you. He says he's your brother, the intern at the front desk said, her voice a little hesitant. My paintbrush paused, and a drop of gold paint fell on the canvas, like a shooting star. Let him in. Tyler stood in the middle of the gallery, wearing a washed-out suit and a crooked tie. He was much thinner, with faint dark circles under his eyes. His limited-edition sneakers had been replaced with ordinary black leather shoes, and the heel was scuffed. Sis, he said, not meeting my eyes, his fingers nervously twisting the corner of his suit jacket. I'm an intern at the gallery next door. I heard it was your anniversary today. The chains on the mural sparkled in the sunlight. I remembered the boy who threw his computer, the brother who stole my design sketches, the drunken kid who came at me with a knife. And now, he was standing in my gallery like a lost child. How's the internship? I got off the scaffolding. Lily walked over with 2 glasses of lemonade. Tyler's eyes lit up. It's good. My boss said I have a knack for art restoration. He pulled an envelope out of his pocket. This is the money I owe you. $8,000, with interest. The envelope was thick and worn at the edges, as if he had been carrying it for a long time. I took the envelope but didn't open it. Keep it. Buy yourself some good tools. I turned and pointed to the mural. Do you see that girl? She used to think her family was her whole world. Then she found out the world is a much bigger place. Tyler looked where I was pointing. He suddenly covered his face, his shoulders shaking slightly. I'm sorry, his voice was soft, as if he was afraid of disturbing something. Mom and Dad, they got divorced. Dad's working construction in Arizona, and Mom moved in with my uncle last month. I gave Lily a look, and she and the other interns immediately left. It was just the 2 of us in the gallery. Jazz music echoed under the dome. Sunlight came through the sunflower-shaped windows, weaving a golden net on the floor. I sold your design sketches for $8,000. Tyler's tears fell on his suit pants, leaving a dark stain. I spent it all on sneakers and video games. Then the school found out, and I almost got expelled. Mom begged the principal for a long time to let me stay. My phone vibrated in my pocket with a text from my mom. It was 5 words, I am sorry I failed you. How many numbers had she used since I blocked her? The 7th? The 8th? Tyler, I said, gently patting his back, just like when he used to fall down when he was little. What's important isn't the past, it's who you want to be now. I took a brand new set of restoration tools from a drawer. I had ordered them specially last week. His name was engraved on them. Come work for me tomorrow. The gallery needs a restoration assistant. Tyler's head shot up, his face covered in tears. Really? But there's one condition, I said, pointing to the rules on the wall. Rule number 1, no stealing. He laughed through his tears and nodded vigorously, like a little chick pecking for food. The sun shone on his face. I suddenly realized that his smile was a lot like mine, with two small fangs. It had just been hidden for years by bitterness and arrogance. On the night of the anniversary, the gallery was packed. Artists took photos in front of the mural, collectors chatted quietly, and Lily and the kids painted among the sunflowers, their laughter as clear as a wind chime. Mark came over and handed me a glass of champagne. He had a new scar on his arm. He had accidentally cut it on a metal frame while installing a sculpture last week. "I saw Tyler earlier," he said, touching my finger. "He seems to have grown up." I looked at Tyler in the crowd. He was explaining a painting to an elderly woman, his eyes shining. "People always grow up. Sometimes they just need a little push." My phone vibrated again. This time it was a picture from an unknown number, my dad standing in front of a construction site in Arizona, wearing a hard hat, his hair much grayer now. He was holding the sunflower painting I had made in high school. The frame was a bit bent. There was no text, just a sun emoji. "What are you thinking about?" Mark asked, following my gaze. The city lights in the distance looked like scattered stars. "I'm thinking," I said, resting my head on his shoulder, shaking the champagne glass gently, "we did it." Evelyn suddenly tapped her glass. The whole room fell silent. "Dear friends," she said, wearing a royal blue dress, her silver hair shining like moonlight. "I have an announcement to make today. The Starry Night Gallery is launching the Rising Star program, which will fund 10 talented low-income art students every year." She turned to me, her eyes sparkling. "And the first sponsor of this program is our very own Emily." Applause erupted. Lily and the interns threw golden glitter, and it fell like a shower of stars. I looked at Mark. He gave me a thumbs up, tears in his eyes. My phone vibrated in my pocket with a new text from my mom. I saw the news. "So proud of you." This time, I didn't delete it. I just turned off the screen. At midnight, the guests had left. Mark and I lay on the gallery floor, our heads resting on paint buckets, looking up at the mural on the dome. The girl was breaking free from her chains, flying into the starry sky. The gold paint glittered in the moonlight. "You know," Mark's voice was soft, "the first time I saw your work at the Getty Center, I knew you'd be a success." "Which time?" I asked with a smile, tracing circles on his palm. "That time in junior year. Your piece, Basement Sky," he said, turning to me. The moonlight looked like frost on his eyelashes. The girl holding the art book, she had stars in her eyes. I suddenly remembered that basement, the Van Gogh posters, the moldy walls, and my dad's words, "Art doesn't pay the bills." It turned out some seeds only bloom into the brightest flowers in the darkest places. "Mark," I said, sitting up and looking at him seriously. "Let's get married next spring. Right here in the gallery. We can have sunflowers climbing the walls." His eyes lit up like the night sky had just been set on fire. "Are you serious?" I nodded and pulled 2 rings out of my pocket, made from leftover copper from a sculpture. Tiny sunflowers were engraved on the inside. Evelyn said it's an artist's romance. Mark slipped the ring onto my finger. It was a perfect fit. We kissed in the empty gallery. The girl in the mural was smiling, stars sparkling in her hair. Outside the window, the Los Angeles sky was starting to grow pale. The first ray of sun came through the sunflower-shaped window, falling on our paint-stained hands like golden crowns. My phone vibrated in the morning light. It was a message from Lily. "Emily, the New York Times wants to interview you. The headline is From the Basement to the Arts District, a Girl's Gallery Dream." A long string of exclamation points and star emojis followed. I put my phone down. Mark was already making coffee. The machine gurgled, like it was singing. The gallery doors were open. The morning breeze carried the scent of the arts district, paint, turpentine, and fresh-baked bread. In the distance, the sound of the Pacific waves was faint, and seagulls circled in the sky. "Coffee's ready." Mark came over with 2 mugs. Crooked sunflowers were painted on them. We had made them on our first date at a pottery studio. I took the mug, and the steam fogged up my glasses. Through the misty steam, the gallery's dome looked like a starry sky. The girl in the mural was flying toward the sun, her chains scattered behind her, turning into golden stars. I finally understood that freedom isn't about running away. It's about accepting the past, embracing the present, and bravely walking toward the future. Just like a sunflower, always turning toward the light.